The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor, red liquid spreading like blood across the white tiles. Chioma stood frozen in the doorway of her own bedroom, her shopping bag slipping from her hands as she stared at the scene before her, her husband Emeka, naked and tangled in their silk sheets with her younger sister, Adanna. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Chioma, Emeka scrambled to cover himself, his dark skin glistening with sweat, his eyes wide with panic. But Chioma couldn't hear him over the roaring in her ears, the way her heart seemed to be breaking inside her chest with actual, physical pain. Adanna pulled the sheet up to her chin, her makeup smeared, her expression not apologetic but defiant. Sister, I can explain. In my bed? Chioma's voice came out as a whisper, then grew to a scream. In my house? With my husband? Her hands trembled as she gripped the doorframe. 16 years of marriage. 3 children. A life built brick by brick in the upscale neighborhood of Ikoyi, Lagos, and this was how it crumbled. Emeka stood up, pulling on his boxer shorts with shaking hands. It's not what you think. We were just what, Emeka? Just destroying our family? Just spitting on everything we built? Chioma's voice broke. She was 45 years old, a successful event planner in Lagos, a woman who commanded respect at every social gathering she organized. And here she was, reduced to a cliché, the betrayed wife standing in her own bedroom doorway. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with numb fingers and saw a message from an unknown number. I have information about your husband you need to see. Meet me at Terra Culture tomorrow at noon. Come alone. The message included a photo attachment. With trembling fingers, Chioma opened it. The image showed Emeka entering a hotel with Adanna 6 months ago. 6 months. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a calculated, ongoing betrayal. How long? Chioma asked, her voice eerily calm now. The shock was giving way to something else, something cold and sharp. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Chioma's living room, illuminating the chaos of the previous night. Emeka had taken most of his clothes when the security guards escorted him out, but evidence of their life together remained everywhere. Wedding photos on the walls, his favorite armchair by the window, their children's school portraits on the mantel. Their children. Chioma's stomach turned as she thought about Kamsi, 16, Zuri, 13, and little Chidi, only 9. They were staying with Emeka's mother in Victoria Island for the weekend, thank God. They hadn't witnessed their parents' marriage exploding into 1,000 pieces. She sat on the white leather sofa, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her phone clutched in her hand. At 6 a.m., she had received another message from the unknown number. Don't tell anyone about our meeting. Your husband has eyes everywhere. Trust no one. Who was sending these messages? How did they know so much about her life? Chioma's best friend Ngozi arrived at 7, carrying a bag of meat pies from their favorite bakery in Surulere. Ngozi took one look at Chioma's face and set the bag down, pulling her into a tight embrace. Adanna called me, Ngozi said softly. I told her she was dead to me. How could she do this to you? Chioma couldn't answer. She just cried, her body shaking with sobs she'd been holding in since the security guards had driven away with Emeka and Adanna in separate cars. Her younger sister hadn't even looked back. He threatened me, Chioma finally said, pulling away and wiping her eyes. Emeka said he knows things that could destroy my reputation. What could he possibly know that's worse than what he's done? Ngozi's expression changed, becoming guarded. Chioma, there's something I need to tell you. I didn't want to before because I thought I was just being paranoid, but... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Last month, when you were in Abuja for that governor's daughter's wedding, Emeka came to my boutique. He was asking strange questions about your finances, about how much money you make from your events business. Why didn't you tell me? I did. I sent you a message, but you said Emeka was just being supportive, trying to... Terra Culture sat in the heart of Victoria Island, its red walls and artistic atmosphere usually a place of joy for Chioma. She'd attended book readings here, art exhibitions, cultural events. Today, as she parked her black Mercedes SUV and walked toward the restaurant section, it felt like walking to an execution. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. She arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a Chapman cocktail she had no intention of drinking, and waited. The lunch crowd was beginning to filter in, businesspeople in sharp suits, young professionals on their lunch breaks, a group of tourists admiring the art gallery upstairs. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that Chioma's entire world was collapsing. At exactly noon, a young man approached her table. He couldn't have been more than 25, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, carrying a worn backpack. His eyes were cautious but determined. Mrs. Okafor? He asked quietly. Chioma nodded, studying him. You're the one who's been sending me messages? My name is Olamide Adebayo, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. And I'm sorry for the cryptic messages, but I couldn't risk your husband intercepting any communication. He's been monitoring your phone. Monitoring how do you know that? Olamide pulled out a tablet from his backpack and opened it to show her a series of screenshots. Because I've been monitoring him. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. And 3 months ago, I discovered something that involves you directly. Chioma's heart raced. What are you talking about? Who are you really? I'm your half-brother, Olamide said quietly. The restaurant noise faded to a distant hum. Chioma stared at this stranger, this young man with his earnest eyes and worn clothes, and tried to process his words. That's impossible. My father only had 2 daughters. Me and Adanna. That's what he told you. Olamide's voice was sad. But it's not true. My mother was Abani Adebayo. She worked as your father's secretary for 20 years. I'm 24 years old, Mrs. Okafor. Do the math. Chioma felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Her father, Pastor James Nwosu, had been a respected man in their community. A church elder. A businessman. He couldn't have had a secret child. But looking at Olamide's face, she saw it. The same wide-set eyes. The same shape of the nose. The same way of holding his head slightly tilted when he was serious. My mother died 2 years ago, Olamide continued. Cancer. Before she died, she told me everything. About their relationship, about how your father had promised to acknowledge me but never did. About how he paid for my education quietly, sending money through anonymous accounts. He pulled out a folder from his backpack. These are bank statements from your father's accounts. You'll see monthly transfers to my mother for 24 years. Chioma took the folder with numb fingers. The documents were authentic, she recognized her father's account numbers, his signature on some of the transfer forms. Why are you telling me this now? Why contact me about Emeka? Because your father's will wasn't what you think it was. You didn't take anything, Olamide said quietly. You didn't know I existed. But Emeka and Adanna knew. They chose to cheat both of us. And I think... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I think my father would have wanted us to know each other. To be family, even if it's too late for him to see it. Tears pricked Chioma's eyes. I'm sorry. For everything. For what my father put your mother through. For what you've lost. I'm sorry too. For what you're going through now. Olamide stood up. But you have the power to make this right, Mrs. Okafor. Use what I've given you. Fight back. As he turned to leave, Chioma called out, wait. What happens to you? If the will fraud is exposed, you'll get what you're owed. But you'll also expose your mother's affair with my father. Are you ready for that? Olamide smiled sadly. My mother lived in the shadows all her life because of their relationship. I won't let the truth about her existence continue to be buried just to protect people who don't deserve protection. She mattered. I matter. And it's time everyone... The office of Okonkwo and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a modest building in Ikeja, far from the gleaming towers of Victoria Island where the truly successful Lagos lawyers practiced. Chioma had never questioned why her father had used such an unremarkable lawyer for such important matters. Now she understood, you don't hire a prestigious firm when you want secrets kept. If you found out your lawyer betrayed your trust, what would you do? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Mr. Okonkwo was a small man in his 60s with graying hair and perpetual smile that had always seemed kind to Chioma. Now it just looked predatory. He stood when she entered his office, gesturing to a leather chair that had seen better days. Chioma, my dear, you look tired. These marriage troubles, they take such a toll. He settled behind his desk, folding his hands. Now, what questions did you have about your father's estate? I thought we settled everything 3 years ago. We settled what you presented to us, Chioma said, keeping her voice level. But I've recently learned that might not have been everything my father intended. His smile faltered. I don't understand. Chioma placed the USB drive on his desk. I have a copy of my father's original will. The one dated 6 months before his death. The one that mentions Olamide Adebayo. The blood drained from Mr. Okonkwo's face. Who told you about? Does it matter? Chioma leaned forward. You committed fraud, Mr. Okonkwo. You altered a legal document at my husband's request, denying my half-brother his rightful inheritance. That's a criminal offense. You could lose your license to practice law. You could go to prison. Now, Chioma, let's not be hasty. I also have bank records showing the payment Emeka made to you. 5 million naira. I wonder what you told your wife that money was for. Mr. Okonkwo's hands were shaking now. Your father, he came to me in confidence. He told me about the boy, said he wanted to make amends. But then he got sick, and Adanna came to see me. She was so upset, crying, saying how finding out about her father's bastard child was destroying her. And then Emeka came, and he was so reasonable. He said exposing this secret would only hurt you, would tarnish your father's memory in the community. He suggested we simplify things. Simplify, Chioma repeated, her voice dripping with contempt. You stole from a young man whose only crime was being born. You stole from me, because I never got the chance to know my brother while my father was alive. What do you want? Mr. Okonkwo asked, defeated. Money? I'll pay back the 5 million. More, if you need it. Just don't report this to the Bar Association. Please. I'm 2 years from retirement. My pension. I want a full confession, Chioma interrupted. Written, signed, and notarized by someone other than you. I want you to detail exactly how Emeka paid you to alter the will, how you forged my father's signature on the false document, everything. I want you to acknowledge Olumide Adebayo's rightful claim to the estate. But that would mean reopening the estate, recalculating the distribution. You and Adanna would have to After hanging up, Chioma sat in her car in Mr. Okonkwo's parking lot, trying to steady her breathing. Everything was moving so fast. 24 hours ago, she'd been a betrayed wife. Now she was orchestrating a multi-pronged legal attack that would destroy not just her marriage but potentially her sister's reputation and a corrupt lawyer's career. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, different from Olumide's number: stop digging into your husband's affairs or your children will pay the price. Chioma's blood went cold. She immediately called Emeka's mother's house where the children were staying. Mama, are the children there? Are they okay? Of course they're here, her mother-in-law said, confused. They're in the backyard playing. Why? What's wrong? Nothing. I miss them. Can you put Kamsi on? When her eldest daughter's voice came on the line, cheerful and unaware of the nightmare unfolding, Chioma had to fight back tears. Mama, when are we coming home? Grandma's nice, but I miss you. Soon, baby. Very soon. But I need you to promise me something. Don't go anywhere with Daddy or Aunt Adanna without telling Grandma first, okay? Not until I come get you. Why? What's happening? Just promise me, Kamsi. Please. Okay, Mama. I promise. After hanging up, Chioma forwarded the threatening message to Folake and to Olumide. Within minutes, Olumide called. That message wasn't from Emeka's phone, he said. I'm tracking it now. It came from a burner phone, purchased yesterday at a shop in Surulere. Someone is helping him. Or trying to scare me off the investigation, Chioma said. Can you trace who bought it? I'm working on it. But Mrs. Okafor, you need to take this threat seriously. If they're willing to threaten your children. I'm not backing down, Chioma interrupted. But I will make sure my children are safe. Can you help me arrange private security for them? I know people. Give me an hour. As Chioma drove home, her mind raced through possible suspects. Emeka was the obvious choice, but the message had seemed designed to stop her investigation into his financial crimes. If he'd already stolen millions, why would he care if she discovered more evidence? Unless there was more. More money, more crimes, more secrets buried so deep that exposing them would destroy not just his life but potentially others. She pulled into her driveway and saw Emeka's Range Rover still parked outside. True to his word, he hadn't left. And standing in her living room, visible through the large front windows, were Emeka and Adanna, laughing together like they owned the place. Chioma sat in her car. The police station in Ikoyi smelled of stale coffee and old paperwork. Chioma sat across from Detective Obi Namdi, a stern-looking man in his 40s who'd been recommended by Folake. Emeka and Adanna had refused to come, claiming they could handle the blackmail privately. But Chioma knew better than to let them control this narrative. Have you ever been blackmailed or known someone who was? Tell us your story in the comments and where you're watching from. So someone is threatening to expose your husband's affair with your sister unless they pay 10 million naira, Detective Namdi said, making notes. And yesterday, you received a separate threat about your children. Mrs. Okafor, do you think these threats are connected? I don't know, Chioma admitted. But I think both threats are designed to keep us from looking into my husband's financial activities. She decided to tell the detective everything: the stolen money, the fraudulent loans, the altered will. She'd brought copies of all the evidence from Olumide's USB drive. If she was going to fight Emeka, she needed law enforcement on her side. Detective Namdi looked through the documents with increasing concern. This is more serious than I initially thought. Mrs. Okafor, your husband hasn't just committed adultery. He's committed fraud, forgery, and possibly money laundering if these investments are what I think they are. What do you mean? This real estate development in Abuja. He tapped the contract. I recognize the company. They were investigated last year for running a Ponzi scheme disguised as property investment. If your husband put money into this, he didn't invest, he got scammed. And if he used your company as collateral for loans to fund it, you're both liable for debts on an investment that doesn't exist. Chioma felt the room tilt. How much are we talking about? The loans total 17 million naira, according to these documents. But if the development is fraudulent and the lenders come after you, they'll want interest and penalties. You could be looking at 25 million naira or more. 25 million. It would bankrupt her. Destroy her business. Take everything she'd built over 16 years of hard work. There's something else, Detective Namdi said carefully. These loan documents were signed 6 months ago. But the account they directed the money to isn't your husband's personal account or even the fraudulent development company. Look at the account number. Chioma looked. The numbers seemed familiar, but she couldn't place them. That's Mr. Okonkwo's account, the detective said. Your family lawyer. He's not just complicit in the will fraud, he's part of this investment scheme. He may have been the one who convinced your husband to invest in the first place. But why? What does Mr. Okonkwo gain? Commission, most likely. These Ponzi schemes work by recruiting new investors. The earlier investors get paid with the money from later investors, creating the illusion of profit. Mr. Okonkwo probably got a percentage of every naira your husband invested. Chioma thought about her meeting with the lawyer that morning. He'd seemed scared, defeated. But he hadn't mentioned any of this. He's supposed to bring me a confession about the will fraud by 5 p.m. today. Do you think he'll actually do it? Detective Namdi checked his watch. It was almost 4:30. If he's smart, he'll run. Men like that, when the walls start closing in, they disappear. Take whatever money they have left and leave the country. We need to stop him. Chioma stood abruptly. If he runs, I'll never recover the money he stole. And I need that confession about the will. I can send officers to his office and his home, the detective said, reaching for his phone. But Mrs. Okafor, you should know, if we arrest him, no court will give you custody. Not when I show them evidence of your crimes. What evidence? Those documents from that boy claiming to be your half-brother? A convicted hacker with a grudge against successful people? That's how my lawyer will paint him. And Mr. Okonkwo? By now, he's already destroyed any paper trail connecting him to me. It's your word against mine, Chioma. And I'm not the one who's been acting crazy. Chioma realized with growing horror that Emeka had been planning this defense for weeks, maybe months. The careful documentation of her meetings with Tabo, the hints that she was becoming unstable, the way he'd positioned himself as the reasonable party trying to negotiate a quiet divorce. He'd been building a case for her being an unreliable witness to her own life. What do you want? She asked, forcing herself to stay calm. Drop everything. Tell the police you made a mistake. Sign divorce papers giving me joint custody and 50% of all marital assets. And never speak to that Alyamide boy again. And if I agree to all this, you'll let me see my children? You can see them right now. They're at the Filmhouse Cinema, watching a movie with their favorite aunt. Join them. Be a family one last time before we end this marriage. He paused. But Chioma? If you bring the police, if you make a scene, if you do anything to embarrass Adanna or me in public, I have people there. People who will make sure the children disappear before you can reach them. Do you understand? She understood. He'd thought of everything, planned for every contingency. And he was using the children as shields, knowing she would sacrifice anything to keep them safe. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said and hung up. Alyamide called back. I've got them. They're definitely at the film house. But Mrs. Okafor, there's something else. I've been tracing the blackmail messages. The ones demanding 10 million naira? They're coming from inside Mr. Okonkwo's law office. What? But that doesn't make sense. Why would Mr. Okonkwo blackmail Emeka and Adanna when he's working with them? Maybe he's not working with them anymore. Maybe he realized the investment scheme is falling apart and he's trying to grab whatever money he can before it all collapses. Or, Alyamide paused. Or maybe someone in his office discovered what he's been doing and is trying to profit from it. Chioma's mind raced through the possibilities. Who else works at his office? According to public records, he has 1 associate lawyer and 2 secretaries. I'm running background checks now. As Chioma approached the cinema, she saw Detective Namdi's unmarked car parked across the street. He'd followed her. Part of her was grateful for the backup, but she knew Emeka's threat had been serious. If police entered the cinema, he would make good on his promise. She called the detective. You need to stay outside. He's threatening the children if he sees police. I won't enter. But I have officers at every exit. If he tries to leave with those kids, we'll stop him. Chioma walked into the cinema, her heart pounding. The lobby was busy with families buying tickets, couples on dates, teenagers laughing over popcorn. Normal people living normal lives. She scanned the crowd and saw Adanna standing near the snack counter with all 3 children. Kamsi saw her first. "Mama." She ran over, Zuri and Chitty following. "Aunt Adanna said you gave permission, but I wasn't sure. I'm glad you're here." Chioma hugged all 3 of them tightly, breathing in the familiar smell of their hair, feeling the solid warmth of their bodies. They were safe. For now. "Go back to Aunt Adanna," she said softly. "I need to talk to her for a minute." As the children walked back to their aunt, Chioma approached Adanna. Up close, she could see her sister was scared despite her defiant posture. "Where's Emeka?" Chioma asked quietly. "He'll be here soon. He wanted to give you time to think about his offer." "His offer to blackmail me using my own children?" Adanna's expression hardened. "You don't understand what you're dealing with, Chioma. Emeka is connected. Important people owe him favors. If you try to expose him, you won't just lose this fight, you'll lose everything. This is Chidinma Okonkwo. We need to talk. I have something you want, and you have something I need. I'm listening. I have the original will. The real one, with your father's actual signature, acknowledging Alyamide. My father kept a copy hidden in case he ever needed insurance against your husband. I also have recorded conversations between my father and Emeka discussing the fraud." She paused. "I'll give you everything. All the evidence you need to destroy Emeka and free yourself. But I need something in return. Money. 20 million naira. And a promise that you won't press charges against me for the embezzlement." It was almost funny. Everyone wanted money, Emeka, the Ponzi schemers, the blackmailer. And here was Chioma, the only one who'd actually earned her wealth honestly, being bled dry by all of them. "I don't have 20 million naira, Chioma said. Your event planning business is worth 40 million according to your tax returns. Take out a loan. Sell assets. I don't care how you get it. But if I don't have the money in my account by midnight tomorrow, I send all this evidence to Emeka instead of you. And then you have nothing." The line went dead. Chioma looked at Detective Namdi. "Can we arrest her for extortion? Based on what? A phone call that can't be traced? We need more." He thought for a moment. "But if she has evidence of the original will and recorded conversations, that could break this case open. It's worth negotiating." "You want me to pay a blackmailer? I want you to buy time while we build a case against everyone involved. Play along. Tell her you'll get the money. Meanwhile, we gather evidence, secure witnesses, and when we're ready, we arrest them all at once, Emeka, Mr. Okonkwo, Chidinma, everyone." Chioma realized he was right. But could she stall for long enough? And more importantly, could she keep her children safe while playing this dangerous game? She walked back into the cinema lobby. Emeka had arrived and was standing with Adanna and the children, looking relaxed and confident. When he saw Chioma, he smiled. "So? Have you thought about my offer?" "I need time," Chioma said. "This is a big decision. I want to talk to my lawyer, review the terms." "You have until tomorrow morning," Emeka interrupted. 9 a.m. "Meet me at Mr. Okonkwo's office with signed divorce papers, or I file for custody and start exposing every dirty secret I have about you." "Fine. Tomorrow at 9. Chioma turned to the children. "Kids, say goodbye to Daddy and Aunt Adanna. You're coming home with me tonight." "I don't think so," Emeka said. "They're staying with my mother. For their own safety." "No." Chioma's voice was steel. "They're my children too, and they're coming home with me. Unless you want to physically stop me in front of all these witnesses." Emeka looked around the crowded cinema lobby. People were starting to stare at their tense conversation. He couldn't make a scene without undermining his careful narrative of being the reasonable party. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "But remember, Chioma, tomorrow at 9. Don't be late." As Chioma drove home with her 3 children in the back seat, chattering about the movie they'd watched, she felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. 24 hours to find 20 million naira, build a case against her husband, protect her children, and somehow keep herself out of prison. But for the first time since walking in on Emeka and Adanna, she felt something else too, determination. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was fighting back. When they got home, Chioma settled the children in front of the TV and went upstairs to her bedroom. She opened her laptop and started making calls. First to Folklore, her lawyer. Then to Alyamide. Then to a private security firm to arrange protection for the children. And finally, she called a number she'd never thought she'd use, a journalist friend who specialized in exposing corporate fraud and political corruption. If Emeka wanted war, she would give him war. But it would be fought on her terms now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. What do you think Chioma should do? Comment below with your advice. The sun rose over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, but Chioma hadn't slept. She'd spent the night on her laptop, going through every document, every bank statement, every piece of evidence. She'd called in favors from business contacts, reached out to clients whose husbands were lawyers or judges, and mapped out a strategy that was either brilliant or completely insane. If someone threatened your family, how far would you go to protect them? Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. At 7 a.m., Olyamide arrived at her house with a tired-looking woman in her 30s. "This is Chidinma Okonkwo," Olyamide said. "She agreed to meet with us before the deadline." Chioma studied the woman who'd been blackmailing everyone. She looked nothing like her father, tall where he was short, with sharp features and an air of desperation rather than calculation. "Why are you really doing this?" Chioma asked. "The embezzlement, the blackmail. What do you need 20 million naira for so badly that you're willing to commit multiple crimes?" Chidinma's eyes filled with tears. "My father has been stealing from me for years. I'm the one who built his practice up, who brought in the real clients, who did the actual legal work. But he paid me minimum wage while he lived large on money he made from schemes like yours." "The embezzlement? That was my own money, wages he never paid me. And the blackmail?" She laughed bitterly. "I'm taking what I'm owed from people who deserve to lose it." "You're owed nothing from me," Chioma said firmly. "I'm a victim here too. Then help me take them all down." Chidinma pulled out a phone. "I have everything. Recordings, documents, emails. My father kept backup files of all his dirty deals because he's paranoid. And I copied everything." She looked between Chioma and Olyamide. "I don't really want 20 million naira. I want protection. I want witness immunity. Because if I testify against my father and your husband, they'll come after me. I need guarantees." Olyamide looked at Chioma. "Detective Namdi can arrange witness protection if her testimony is valuable enough." "It is," Chidinma insisted. "I can prove that Emeka and my father plan not just the will fraud but a whole series of schemes. They've been doing this for years, finding wealthy men, convincing them to invest in fake developments, then splitting the money." "Your husband? He's not a victim of the Ponzi scheme. He's one of the operators." Chioma felt the room spin. "What? Emeka never invested his own money. He invested yours, knowing he'd lose it, so he could claim bankruptcy and avoid having to split assets with you in the divorce. Meanwhile, his real money, the money he made from running the Ponzi scheme on other people, is hidden in offshore accounts." Chidinma pulled up documents on her phone. "I have the account numbers, the transfer records, everything." It was worse than Chioma had imagined. Emeka hadn't just betrayed her, he'd used her as cover for criminal activity. Her business, her reputation, everything was being used as a shield while he stole from dozens of people. "How much has he stolen in total?" Chioma asked. "Over 200 million naira from various investors over 3 years. 200 million. The scale was staggering. This wasn't just about a failed marriage or family betrayal anymore. Emeka was a criminal on a massive scale. "We need to call Detective Namdi," Chioma said, reaching for her phone. "Wait." Chidinma grabbed her arm. "If you call the police now, Emeka will know something's wrong. He's expecting to meet you at my father's office at 9. If you don't show up, or if you show up with police, he'll run. And all that money in those offshore accounts? It'll disappear with him. So what do you suggest? Set a trap. Go to the meeting like he expects. Wear a wire. Get him to confess everything on tape. With my documents and your recording, we'll have enough to ensure he goes to prison for a very long time." It was dangerous. Emeka was clearly capable of more than Chioma had realized. But it was also an opportunity to end this once and for all. "I'll do it," Chioma said. Detective Namdi arrived an hour later with recording equipment and a small team. They fitted Chioma with a nearly invisible wire and went over the plan. She would meet Emeka at Mr. Okonkwo's office as scheduled. Chidinma would be there too, playing her role as the loyal secretary. And hidden in offices nearby, police would be listening and recording everything. "Get him to talk about the Ponzi scheme," Detective Namdi instructed. "Get him to admit to stealing your money, to the fraud, to hiding assets offshore. The more he says, the better our case." "What about my father's will?" Chioma asked. "Can we use this to restore Olyamide's inheritance?" With Chidinma's testimony and the original will, absolutely. But that's secondary to stopping Emeka's criminal enterprise. At 8:45 a.m., Chioma drove to Mr. Okonkwo's office. Her hands were steady on the wheel, her mind clear. She'd left the children with Ngozi and private security guards. Whatever happened today, they would be safe. Mr. Okonkwo's office looked the same as always, shabby, unremarkable, the perfect cover for years of fraud. Chidinma was at her desk in the reception area, playing the role perfectly. She gave Chioma a small nod as she walked past. Emeka was already in Mr. Okonkwo's private office, looking pleased with himself. The lawyer himself seemed nervous, fidgeting with papers on his desk. "Good, you're here," Emeka said as Chioma entered. "Did you bring the divorce papers?" "I did." Chioma pulled out a folder from her bag. "But I want to understand something first. The 17. Fine," he said finally. "The Abuja development was never real. It was a front for moving money out of the country. Your father's friend, Mr. Okonkwo here, connected me with people who run these schemes. I invested other people's money, told them it was real estate, and when the investments inevitably failed, we split the profits." "How many people?" Chioma asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Dozens. Maybe 50 over 3 years. Small investors, medium investors, a few big fish. We made over 200 million naira. And my money? The 17 million from our joint account? That was for show. To make it look like I was invested too, like I was a victim when everything collapsed. The money is safely offshore in the Cayman Islands. Adanna helped me set up the accounts." There it was. The full confession, all on tape. Chioma saw Mr. Okonkwo's face go pale as he realized what Emeka had just admitted. "You idiot," the lawyer hissed. "Why would you tell her this?" "Because she's right, if I go down, she goes down. Her signatures are on those loan documents. She can't turn me in without implicating herself." Emeka smiled at Chioma. "So here's what's going to happen. You sign the divorce papers, agree to my custody terms, and keep your mouth shut. In exchange, I'll keep your name out of the criminal investigations when they inevitably come. I'll say you knew nothing. You can keep your business, your reputation. And if I refuse? Then I bury you. I have evidence of you meeting with Tabo that looks bad. I have testimony from Adanna that you were abusive during the marriage. I have documentation suggesting you knew about the fraud all along. By the time I'm done, you'll be the villain and I'll be the victim. So choose wisely." Chioma stood up slowly. "I choose honesty. I choose justice. And I choose to stop you from hurting anyone else." The office door burst open and Detective Namdi entered with 4 officers. "Emeka Okafor, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and theft. You have the right to remain silent?" Emeka's face went from confident to shocked to enraged in seconds. He lunged at Chioma, but the officers grabbed him. "You were wearing a wire? You set me up?" "You set yourself up," Chioma said calmly. "Every word you just said was recorded. And it's over." As they handcuffed Emeka, Mr. Okonkwo tried to run but was caught immediately. Within minutes, both men were being led out of the office in handcuffs. Chidinma came in, her expression relieved. "Is it done?" "It's done," Detective Namdi confirmed. "Ms. Okonkwo, we'll need your full testimony and all the documents you have. In exchange, we can discuss immunity arrangements." After everyone left, Chioma sat alone in the empty office. She'd done it. She'd taken down Emeka, exposed the fraud, protected her children. But the victory felt hollow. Her marriage was over. Her sister was complicit in everything. Her father's legacy was tarnished. And she still had to figure out how to rebuild her life from the ashes. Her phone rang. It was Adanna. "What did you do?" her sister screamed. "Emeka's been arrested. They're saying he ran a Ponzi scheme. They're going to come for me next." "Yes," Chioma said quietly. "They probably will. You helped him, Adanna. You set up offshore accounts, you lied to me, you used our family to help him steal from innocent people. I didn't know. He told me it was just moving money for tax purposes. You're lying. You knew exactly what he was doing. And you didn't care because you were sleeping with him, because you thought you'd get a share of the money." Chioma felt cold. "You're my sister. I loved you. I protected you our whole lives. And you destroyed me for money and a man. Chioma, please. Help me. Talk to the police, tell them I was deceived." "No." Chioma hung up. Later that evening, Alyamide came to Chioma's house. They sat in the living room while the children slept upstairs, going through the documents about their father's real will. "With Mr. Okonkwo's confession and Chidinma's testimony, we can restore the original will terms," Alyamide said. "You and Adanna will need to return a portion of the inheritance to me. It'll be handled through the courts." "I'll gladly give you what you're owed," Chioma said. "I'm sorry you had to grow up not knowing your father publicly. I'm sorry for all of it. It wasn't your fault." Alyamide smiled sadly. "But maybe now, we can be the family we should have been all along." Chioma felt tears on her cheeks. "I'd like that." Her phone buzzed with a news alert. The story had broken, Lagos businessman arrested in 200 million naira Ponzi scheme. Within hours, it would be everywhere. Her name would be mentioned as the wife who exposed him. Her business would be scrutinized. Her life would become public spectacle. But she would survive. She'd survive betrayal, threats, and discovering that everyone she loved had lied to her. She could survive being the center of a scandal. And maybe, eventually, she could even thrive. What would you do after exposing your spouse? Share this story and comment your thoughts. Three months later, Lagos was entering its rainy season. Water fell in sheets from gray skies, flooding streets and forcing vendors to cover their wares with plastic sheeting. But inside the conference room at Chioma's event planning office, the atmosphere was bright and bustling. We've come to the end, but did Chioma really get her revenge? Comment below where you're watching from and what you think happened. The Adeyemi wedding is our biggest booking yet, Ngozi said, reviewing contracts spread across the table. 500 guests, 3 venues, international catering. It's like everyone wants to hire the woman who took down Lagos's biggest con artist. Chioma smiled but didn't look up from her laptop. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of police statements, court appearances, and media interviews. Emeka's trial was set for next month, and prosecutors were confident he'd spend the next 15 years in prison. Mr. Okonkwo had already been disbarred and was awaiting sentencing. And Adanna. Her sister had fled to South Africa but was arrested 2 weeks later trying to board a flight to Dubai. She was back in Lagos now, awaiting trial as Emeka's accomplice. They'd offered her a plea deal if she testified against him, but Chioma hadn't been following that closely. Some wounds needed distance to heal. Mama. Chidi ran into the conference room, his school uniform still neat despite it being pickup time. Uncle Olyamide is here. Chioma's half-brother appeared in the doorway, carrying shopping bags and wearing a genuine smile. Over the past 3 months, he'd become a regular presence in their lives. The children had adjusted surprisingly well to having an uncle, especially when they learned he was a tech genius who could help with homework and teach them coding. I brought lunch, Olyamide said, setting down bags from their favorite Nigerian restaurant. Jollof rice, plantains, and suya. I figured you'd be too busy to eat. He was right. Chioma had been working non-stop, rebuilding her business's reputation, paying back the victims of Retrio. Continue. Aka's Ponzi scheme from what could be recovered, and restructuring her finances. The courts had frozen Emeka's offshore accounts, and while most of the stolen money would go to his victims, Chioma would recover some of what he'd taken from their joint account. You're a lifesaver, Chioma said, finally looking up from her screen. How was the meeting with the estate lawyer? Olyamide's expression grew serious. It's settled. The court officially recognized the original will. I'm receiving my 40% of Papa's estate, and you and Adanna will return the excess you received. He paused. I told them to donate Adanna's share to charity. She doesn't deserve a naira. Chioma nodded slowly. It was harsh, but fair. Adanna had betrayed everyone, not just Chioma, but their father's memory, Olyamide's rightful inheritance, and dozens of innocent investors. What will you do with your inheritance? Ngozi asked, unpacking the food. I'm starting a foundation, Olyamide said. For children of hidden families, kids whose parents never acknowledged them publicly. Legal aid, educational support, counseling. I want to make sure no one else has to grow up the way I did, wondering why their father was ashamed of them. Chioma felt her throat tighten with emotion. He wasn't ashamed of you. He was just a coward. I know. And I've made peace with that. Olyamide handed her a plate of jollof rice. But I can still make something good come from all this pain. As they ate, Kamsi, Zuri, and Chidi joined them, filling the office with their chatter and laughter. The children had been through therapy after everything that happened. They'd needed help processing their father's crimes, their aunt's betrayal, and the dramatic reshaping of their family. But children were resilient, and with honesty and support, they were healing. Mama, Kamsi said between bites of plantain, some kids at school were asking about Daddy. About the trial. What should I tell them? Chioma had dreaded this question. Tell them the truth. Your father made very bad choices that hurt a lot of people, including our family. But that doesn't mean he didn't love you. It means he was sick in a way that made him do terrible things. And now he has to face consequences. Will we ever see him again? Little Chidi asked, his voice small. Maybe, when you're older and if you want to. But for now, we're healing. We're building a new life. Chioma pulled him onto her lap. And we're going to be okay. Better than okay. Her phone buzzed with a message from Detective Namdi. Chidinma's testimony was excellent. The prosecution is adding money laundering charges. Emeka's looking at 20 years minimum now. 20 years. By the time he got out, Chidi would be 29 years old. The children would have grown up without their father. It was a devastating thought, but Emeka had made his choices. I have news too, Ngozi announced, pulling out her own phone. Remember that corporate client who canceled on you when the scandal first broke? They just called. They want you to plan their annual gala. And they're willing to pay double your usual rate. Double? Chioma raised her eyebrows. They said, and I quote, "We want someone who has integrity and isn't afraid to do what's right, even when it's hard." Ngozi grinned. Your honesty has become your brand, Chioma. People respect that. It was true. While some clients had fled when the scandal broke, others had reached out specifically because of how Chioma had handled the situation. She hadn't hidden, hadn't made excuses, hadn't tried to protect her reputation at the expense of truth. And in a city where corruption and complicity were often the default, that kind of integrity was rare and valuable. I have something for you, Alyamide said, pulling out an envelope. I've been working on tracking down all the investors who lost money in Emeka's scheme. Some of them are elderly, some lost their entire savings. With my portion of Papa's inheritance, I want to set up a compensation fund to help them recover what they lost. Chioma looked at the envelope, at this young man who had every reason to be bitter but had chosen generosity instead. That's incredibly kind. But you don't have to do this. I know. But I want to. Alyamide's eyes were steady. We can't undo what was done. But we can try to make it a little bit right. Over the next hour, they made plans. Chioma would use her connections in Lagos society to identify victims and facilitate the compensation process. Alyamide would handle the financial and legal aspects. Together, they would try to restore some of what Emeka had stolen, not just money, but faith in justice and human goodness. As the meeting wound down and the children went back to doing homework, Chioma found herself alone in her office for a moment. She looked out the window at rain-soaked Lagos, at the city that had been both the site of her greatest betrayal and her ultimate triumph. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Okafor? A woman's voice, elderly and wavering. My name is Mrs. Aduk Babatunde. I was one of the people who invested with your husband. I lost 3 million naira, my entire retirement savings. Chioma's heart sank. Mrs. Babatunde, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. I'm working with prosecutors to recover as much money as possible. I'm not calling about the money, the woman interrupted. Well, not just about the money. I'm calling to say thank you. Thank me? You exposed him. You could have stayed silent, protected yourself, let all of us suffer while you divorced quietly and moved on. But you didn't. You risked everything to stop him from hurting more people. Her voice cracked with emotion. My grandson says I'll get most of my money back because you helped the police. But even if I didn't, even if I lost everything, I'd still thank you for your courage. After they hung up, Chioma sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. She'd spent 3 months feeling like she'd destroyed her own life, shattered her children's family, exposed private pain to public scrutiny. But Mrs. Babatunde's call reminded her why she'd done it. Not revenge. Justice. Not destruction. Protection. She'd stopped Emeka not because she hated him, but because he was hurting innocent people and would continue to do so unless someone stopped him. There was a knock on her door. Alyamide stood there with Ngozi and the children. We were thinking, Kamsi said, stepping forward with her siblings. You've been working so hard, Mama. Taking care of everyone, dealing with the trial, rebuilding the business. But when do you take care of yourself? What do you mean, baby? Zuri handed her a folder. Inside were printouts from a spa resort in Zanzibar. We booked you a week-long vacation. Uncle Alyamide paid for it as a thank you gift, and Auntie Ngozi will watch us while you're gone. I can't just leave for a week. You can, Ngozi said firmly. You need rest, Chioma. You need time to heal without worrying about everyone else. Let us take care of you for once. Chioma looked at these people who loved her, her children, her friend, her newly discovered brother. They were right. She'd been running on adrenaline and determination for months, putting everyone else's needs first. Maybe it was time to put herself first for once. Okay, she said softly. Okay, I'll go. The children cheered, and even Alyamide smiled. But as they filed out of her office, leaving her alone again, Chioma felt a wave of emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. Grief. Not for Emeka, she'd grieved that marriage the moment she walked in on him and Adanna. Not even for her sister, though that betrayal still stung. She grieved for the woman she'd been 3 months ago. The one who trusted easily, loved openly, believed the best in people. That woman was gone, replaced by someone harder, warier, more cynical about human nature. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Maybe wisdom came from pain, and strength came from surviving betrayal. Maybe she needed to lose her naivety to gain her power. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from the journalist friend she'd contacted months ago, the one who specialized in exposing corruption. Your story inspired me to dig deeper into Ponzi schemes in Lagos. I've uncovered 3 more operations. Want to help me take them down? Chioma smiled. 6 months ago, she would have said no, would have wanted nothing to do with such dangerous work. But the woman she was now? The woman who'd faced down her husband, exposed his crimes, and survived public scrutiny? She typed back, absolutely. Let's stop them all. Because that was the real revenge, she realized. Not destroying Emeka, that was justice. The real revenge was refusing to let what he'd done to her make her bitter or broken. It was taking the pain he'd caused and transforming it into purpose. It was using her platform, her experience, her newfound reputation for integrity to protect others from predators like him. Emeka had tried to make her a victim. Instead, she'd become a warrior. 2 weeks later, Chioma stood in a courtroom watching Emeka receive his sentence, 22 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 10 years. He looked older, diminished in his prison clothes, no longer the confident businessman who'd once commanded every room he entered. When his eyes met hers across the courtroom, she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no lingering anger, not even pity. Just nothing. He was a stranger now, someone from another lifetime. As she left the courthouse, reporters crowded around her with cameras and microphones. Mrs. Okafor, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you think justice was served? What's next for you? Chioma paused, looking at all the cameras. This was her moment to speak, not just for herself but for every person who'd been betrayed, used, or victimized by someone they trusted. I feel relieved, she said clearly. Justice has been served, not just for me but for the 50-plus investors my ex-husband defrauded. What's next? I'm going to continue rebuilding my life and my business. I'm going to help my half-brother establish a foundation for children from hidden families. And I'm going to work with investigators to expose and stop other fraudsters who prey on innocent people. She paused. My ex-husband tried to destroy me. He failed. And I want every person watching this who's been betrayed or abused or victimized to know, you can survive this. You can be stronger on the other side. Don't let anyone's betrayal define your future. The reporters shouted more questions, but Chioma walked away, head high, shoulders back. Behind her, she could hear Adanna being led from a separate courtroom after receiving her own sentence, 8 years as an accomplice. Chioma didn't look back. Some bridges, once burned, stayed burned. Alyamide was waiting by her car, along with Ngozi and the children. They'd all come to witness this moment, this closing of one chapter and beginning of another. How do you feel? Alyamide asked as they drove away from the courthouse. Free, Chioma said simply. For the first time in months, maybe years, I feel free. That night, her house was full of people, not for a party celebrating Emeka's conviction, but for a small gathering Alyamide had organized. Victims of the Ponzi scheme who'd received compensation, lawyers who'd worked pro bono on the case, Detective Namdi and his team, even Mrs. Babatunde who'd called to thank her months ago. I want to propose a toast, Alyamide said, raising his glass of champagne. To my sister Chioma, who taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands with you when everything falls apart. And to my father, who I'll never understand but whose mistakes brought Chioma and me together. May we build something better from the ruins he left behind. To new beginnings, everyone echoed. As Chioma clinked glasses with people who'd been strangers 6 months ago but were now part of her new extended family, she realized something profound. Emeka had taken so much from her, her marriage, her trust, her innocence, her biological sister. But in taking those things, he'd inadvertently given her something more valuable, clarity about who she really was and what she was capable of. She was Chioma Nwosu Okafor, daughter of a flawed man, sister to both blood and by choice, mother of 3 resilient children, friend to people who'd proven their loyalty, businesswoman with integrity, and survivor of betrayal. And she was just getting started. Late that night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep, Chioma sat alone on her balcony looking out at Lagos's glittering lights. Her phone buzzed with one final message, from the prison system, an automated notification that Emeka had tried to call her. She deleted the notification without listening to the voicemail. Some voices from the past didn't deserve to be heard in the present. Tomorrow, she would fly to Zanzibar for her week of rest. Then she'd come back and continue rebuilding. She'd help Alyamide with his foundation, work with journalists to expose more fraud, plan beautiful weddings and events for people celebrating love, and raise her children to be honest, strong, and kind. The story that had begun with betrayal would continue with redemption. Not Emeka's redemption, he'd have to find his own path to that, if he ever could. But her own redemption, her own transformation from victim to victor. And maybe that was the best revenge of all, living well, loving fiercely, and refusing to let someone else's darkness extinguish your light. Sorry, my father is dead, Alyamide had said that day at Terra Culture, claiming his place in a family that had denied him. "Sorry, my husband is dead to me," Chioma whispered to the Lagos night. "And I'm more alive than I've ever been." Behind her, inside the house, her children slept peacefully. Beside her in spirit, a brother she'd never known she needed. Ahead of her, a future she'd have to build from scratch but would own completely. The betrayal had nearly destroyed her. Instead, it had set her free. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories of survival and redemption. What part of Chioma's journey resonated with you the most? Comment below and share this story with someone who needs to hear that they can survive betrayal and come out stronger. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And remember, you are stronger than whatever tried to break you. Your story isn't over, it's just beginning. Hit that subscribe button for more stories that inspire, empower, and remind you of your own strength. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.